everybody? I'm excited to have my friend Morgan on the show today. She's someone I met a few years back and someone that is really impacting a lot of people. So I thought it would be really fun to have her on. She's someone that we met kind of in fitness originally. She was starting to do like bikini competitions, started to go into that fitness side. But after getting to know her a little bit more and getting to know her, what she was really about, she's someone that actually struggled in the past with an eating disorder, kind of found fitness, which I feel like kind of helped her. Ended up writing a book and really started to talk to people more about that eating disorder side, kind of healthier lifestyle, and just became someone that has really started to kind of promote wellness and just trying to help people overall. So at this point, I just want to welcome Morgan to the show.
Hey.
So Morgan, so the first thing I want to touch into is so people can get to know you a little bit better. So like growing up as a kid, kind of what kind of kid were you? Kind of what things were you into? And then like as you got a little bit older, you started to find fitness. Do you mind just telling kind of how that all started?
Sure. I would say growing up, I was a very shy and codependent kid. So I never really knew how to advocate for myself, and I kind of relied on other people for sources of happiness. I never really spoke up for what I believed in. I just kind of let people walk all over me. And that's kind of what drove my childhood. Throughout my entire childhood, that's who I was, and that changed a lot as I went through the eating disorder and transitioned to adulthood.
Gotcha. So when did the eating disorder actually start for you? Like how young did you start to notice it, or is it how long did it take maybe for you to notice it, and it could have been happening for a little while?
I want to say when I was about 15, 16 is when I really started to develop the eating disorder. And it originally started as a coping mechanism because there were things in my life that I couldn't control. Like, for example, there was a relationship that I was in that he didn't want to date me anymore, and I couldn't control that. Or sometimes my friends would leave me out, and that felt really bad, but I couldn't control that either. So I use it as a way to control things because I was the only person that can control what I ate, how much of it I ate, and when I ate it.
So a lot of that relationship, everything, that was something that you just needed to take control of your life for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, for you though, it wasn't something like, was it like wasn't as much of a body image issue at that point, or do you feel like that was part of it too?
That was definitely part of it. It was both the control aspect of it and kind of underneath the surface, all those other feelings that were contributing to it. But also it was a body image thing as well, where I felt as if I looked perfect, I would be perfect, and then people would want to be my friend or want to date me, etc.
So that was in high school at that time. You
Yeah.
started getting into high school. So
Yep.
You got through high school. Now, when you started to recognize it and be able to kind of work on it a bit, was it past high school? When did it start to transition to a point where you felt like, I need to make a change or I need to work on things? When did it kind of click in your head, or did it not have like one of those clicking moments in your head that you had to start making some changes?
I definitely had a clicky moment. So when I was a junior in high school, I actually went away to a treatment center out in Waltham. And
Okay.
I think that was like my clicky moment when I was actually in the center. Because when I went to the center, when I originally got there, I was so numb to everything because what comes with an eating disorder can be depression, anxiety, and I had both of those. So once I got to the center, I was pretty numb. And as I was in the center and I was following a meal plan and I was going to group therapy and I started to actually let everything that I was burying deep within me come to the surface, I started to gain a little bit of life. And as I gained a little bit of life, I became more and more motivated by that life that I was slowly regaining. So in treatment is kind of when that click happened and I started to become motivated by life.
So that was a big changing moment for you at that point then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm glad you had that though, because I feel like a lot of people don't take that step to do that. Was that something you felt like you made the decision pretty much on your own, or was there like your family involved, or like, because I know a lot of people struggle with seeking help or maybe feeling vulnerable to go finding help. For you, were you really urged by your family to do it, or is that something you did on your own?
I was urged by my family. They definitely gave me that push, and because I was under 18, they were in control of me, whether
Gotcha.
How long I stayed there, the decision for me to go there. But a part of me, a very small percentage of me, was also on board with wanting it as well. And I think that small percentage of me that was on board slowly started to grow, and I think that's what motivated my recovery as well.
Gotcha. So then, so you transition, you're starting to feel better about yourself. You're starting to at least take steps in that direction of, just overall health. Is that when you started finding fitness? And or is it something that before that actually happened?
No, I wasn't into fitness at all before anything happened. So when I got out of treatment, I slowly started to ease into fitness, and it made me feel better about eating more at first. So it fed into my eating disorder. It was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't recovery. So what had happened on my 18th birthday, I got a gym membership as my birthday present, and I was only allowed to go a couple days a week. And eventually my parents started to trust me more, and I started to eat more, and I became weight restored by going to the gym because I started to gain muscle, and you cannot gain muscle without eating an adequate amount of food. So I learned that pretty quickly, and that was like my motivator to start eating again. And with time, I like to explain it as I had anorexia nervosa, and as I got consumed with the gym, it kind of transferred over to orthorexia, which is this obsession with clean eating and exercise and just having that strict regimen. So I kind of transferred to that. And although that wasn't recovery, again, it was that step in the right direction. And as I had went through my period of orthorexia and bodybuilding, I slowly transitioned to intuitive eating, where I kind of let go of all of that and finally made peace with both food, exercise, and myself.
Gotcha. So the fitness did help at the beginning, but then it took a while to kind of figure out the other side of it. Because I know when we were talking a little bit, fitness can be really impactful and help a lot of people, which I feel like it did for you. But then, like, I went through this also, is then you get into the competing side, where you went into that side of it, which can spiral and so mess with a lot of people's heads. So it's like, you were feeling pretty good. Is that basically something that happened with you then, more or less?
Yeah, so I was feeling good, but the thing about it is that it's very hard to have a healthy, intuitive relationship with food in your body when you're competing, just because essentially what competing is you're depriving your body to get to a certain body fat percentage, and then you're letting strangers judge your body solely based on appearance. And for someone that has struggled with an eating disorder, that wasn't good for my recovery.
Right. No, and I talked to so many people about that too. It's crazy, whether it's like Bree I was talking to her about, or just people and clients that I've had in general. It's like, it's a cool thing to do is compete now. But the problem is most people are insecure with themselves and want that validation of competing. And then it turns into like this huge negative thing because they don't look as good. They don't feel as good. They think that's solving a problem for them. And it doesn't end up working out.
It's very hard to have a positive relationship with food in your body while competing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even plan on ever competing.
Kind of impossible.
Yeah. I mean, I got so up to the point now where I don't even urge people to do it. I think if you have if you didn't have a past eating disorder, I think, and now you probably know more about this from me from the psychological side, but for me, it's like if someone is uncomfortable eating or is obsessive with food or has anything like this, and it isn't in the right mindset to understand it's a short-term thing, and it's a competition, and you have to be very objective. It's very, very hard to step into that and not have any side effects from it. Realistically, it's tough.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think
Okay.
I was going into it with the correct mindset either. So yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think most people are. It's like, this would be cool. A lot of people start doing it, and then it's all of a sudden you're like, you don't realize how bad you're gonna feel. It's like the better you look per se, the worse you feel. Which isn't good.
Definitely. No.
So all this is going on. When did you write your book? And like, what was? And I know the name of your book, but do you want to say the name of your book and then kind of and is it basically just telling your story as a whole?
Yeah, so the book is called Somber Suffocation, and essentially as I was going throughout my eating disorder, I started to write journal entries of kind of how it came about. So like those little moments where it slowly started to consume me and turn into this really big problem. And I basically just published that journal entry, and I did that a few years ago. And honestly, if I were to go back now, I would probably change a couple things, but because like that was my story, so I want to keep it as it is, and eventually with time write another book that's more like the clinical aspect. But for what it is, like that was my story that was written in the 16-year-old teenage mind, so I'm just gonna leave it as it is.
Yeah, but I think that's a good perspective though, of like, you can it really is telling your story of what someone was going through at that time. It's no different than like, I'm 29. 10 years ago, my whole mindset's different, but I thought I was probably right in the moment at that time, and that's just what it was. That's cool though. So if you had to give a piece, actually not say a piece of advice, but like, let's do it this way is, what do you think was the biggest hurdle or struggle for you throughout that whole process of dealing with the eating disorder, trying to find that balance to get healthier? Was there something that kept making you fall back, whether it was your mindset, whether it was specific moments, or like, what for you was like the biggest struggle of trying to transition out of, or not say out of it, but helping with that eating disorder to getting healthier?
Yeah, I want to say the biggest struggle was to make peace with myself and learn to be okay with sitting in silence, because the biggest problem for me was I would be like, go, 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 gotta work out, gotta do this, gotta be obsessive, gotta weigh my food, when I would sit with the silence and the silence would be so loud. So I had to learn to make peace with that. I had to learn to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, because recovery is very uncomfortable and it's hard. But I think all those pieces, including just the self-advocacy piece, was the hardest for me, because like I said, growing up, I didn't know how to advocate for myself. So because I had gone my whole life just going through it like that, it was kind of hard to turn that around and start to advocate for myself and realize I'm worthy of great things. So I want to say that was the hardest part of it all.
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And then for you, what were some like daily habits or daily things you did to kind of find yourself or start to love yourself again, or take those steps, because I think that's helpful, because it can be overwhelming of like, how am I going to do this? But what are some daily steps that you could take, that can help someone start taking those steps in the right direction?
I think some steps include just recognizing when you're having a negative thought and catching yourself in that moment and redirecting it to something more positive. So I like to call that my anxiety's voice. So my anxiety's voice will say, you're not good enough, or you can't do this. And just kind of catching yourself and almost calling yourself out on that thought and just redirecting it to something better. So, for example, if you're going through a difficult time, or you have a hard task at work, instead of saying like, why is this happening to me? Just thinking, all right, like, what can this teach me? How can I get through this? Just changing the mindset.
No, that's great. And then with that being said too, is so the reason I want to make I wanted to have you on too, is because I like having people on that have overcome a lot of things, that, kind of found themselves to an extent. I think a lot of people struggle with not only like the eating disorder side, but just someone that maybe doesn't have an eating disorder, but struggles with finding themselves in general. So, when we met, you were going in personal training, you were going in fitness side a bit more. So, it's interesting now because you're taking the steps in the right direction. So what advice would you give someone that is trying to figure out who they are, maybe find what they're good at, what they want to do? Because your road is bounced around a little. And then now I think you really found yourself to an extent, because you're so passionate about what you do now, because it related so much to who you were at a time, or maybe in general.
Yeah.
So what piece of advice would you give someone that's trying to kind of find themselves?
Try new things and don't be afraid to try those new things. So I thought that I was supposed to be the fitness girl. I was supposed to be the fitness model. I was supposed to be the trainer, the bodybuilder. I thought that's who I was supposed to be. And I was afraid to step out of that, because that's what I was known for. And that's what I had established myself to be. But don't be afraid of that change. Or if you think that you may be more passionate or have a fire growing in you for something else, don't be afraid to take that step or take that risk and actually go into it, because you never know what you could find. Like I started a job working in the mental health field while slowly stopping training. And I just like grew this passion and fire for it, and realized that I was in the wrong spot all along. So just not being afraid to take that initial step, try new things, and figure out what you're passionate about.
Yeah, I have such a similar, it's funny because I think I have a similar story to an extent almost. I'm still obviously in the fitness industry, but I've got so caught up over the last year. My life has been, it's crazy. Long story short though, it's just been a year of, when I got, I went from the fitness guy, the strong bodybuilder guy out in Boston doing my thing. And then boom, I feel like I get hit by a truck. I leave my job, financially take a big hit, and, get injured. So getting injured, I kind of lost weight, lost strength, lost muscle, and I had to reevaluate, like, oh my God, I've associated so long who I was with this title. And like, now it's like, who am I? It's interesting too. And
Yeah.
then this is off topic a little, but it made me think about it when I listened to what you just said. How did social media, some people doesn't affect, some people is whatever. Did that affect you a lot going through the whole process from like a mindset standpoint, or like seen other people's, posting their stuff, or you know what I mean, kind of?
Yeah, no, I totally know what you mean. It did, but I think at the end of the day, you're in control of who you follow and what you choose to feed into. So for me, it took like a big reality check for me to actually go through what I was following and realize what was good for me and what wasn't. And now I feel as if I follow a lot of affirmation or therapy pages that help me a lot with my own perspective in life, and just less of what used to fuel my eating disorder before.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really helpful to a lot of people, is realizing that you control what you want to see, you control what you want to do, and taking that accountability too. Because I think too many people blame too many people for like the situation they're in, when maybe it isn't their fault to an extent, but at the same time, at some point you have to take control of your life.
Yeah, you can decide you figure out what your triggers are and just take control of that. Avoid them. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to get triggered.
Yeah. Okay. So last question I have, I know you're busy, is what I want to do is, if you could give one person a piece of advice that's currently struggling with an eating disorder or depression, or some type of thing along those lines, what piece of advice would you give them to help them get out of that situation?
I would tell them that it's not their fault. Their trauma is not their fault. But I would also tell them that their healing is their responsibility. So everything that's happened to them, like, obviously I would feel for them, and it's terrible. They don't deserve it. It's not their fault. But them taking that action to heal is all on them, and they can do it.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a perfect way to end it. I appreciate what you're doing. I love seeing how far you came over the last even just few years, in the people you're starting to impact. And congratulations again on your job going out to Philadelphia. So
Thank you.
And it's going to be exciting. Yeah. So I'm excited to see where you go, see how things, move forward for you. And then eventually that other book. So it'll be good. Right. Well, thank you for coming on, Morgan. And I'll be in touch with you soon. Have a good rest of your day.
You as well.
Thanks. See you later.